Well, look, I don't know about you, but for me, I absolutely love a fresh helping of slop, and that's why today's news is absolutely fantastic. The good news is that our dear friends at Activision, are coming under fire for allegedly leaning into generative AI to produce their endless torrent of microtransactions. Which is obviously where we're all headed, but it actually turns out it's not just that. Actors are allegedly cutting ties with the company for similar reasons, and that even includes some fairly big names. We haven't found out because of an announcement, we found out because players took a look at the credits and then players used their ears. Of course, live service games are exclusively about making as much money as you can from as little investment as you can get away with. Just look at how any new season of a live service is marketed. The focus is always, well, it's always on the microtransactions, the new store events, the new collaboration, the new theme, not exactly the gameplay or the content. Taking a look at you, Overwatch 2. But with that in mind, we already see extensive outsourcing being used to make these cosmetics. In fact, we recently saw the absolute money printer known as Riot Games restructure their art team seemingly in the direction of substantially more outsourcing of their skins and that kind of thing. So that's just how the industry works, and if that is how they work and how they've shown they work, how do you think AI is going to be approached? I mean, what's easier, spinning up some compute on a model that is fine-tuned to your own data, or hiring an entire company of fallible humans? Well, today we're going to find out. Backed by our sponsor. Where I just learned a pretty spicy story. The Google are suing the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This is all on Ground News, and this story just shows you how powerful their site is, and I'll walk you through it. So here's the story on Ground, and what we see is that Ground captures the story, who broke it, when, who's actually citing who, and biased distribution is rated by 3 independent agencies, which is powerful because here, 65% are center, 35% are left. There are no right-leaning sources, and that means that this appeared in Ground's blind spot area, which is designed to surface you news that you very much likely would have missed based on your reading habits. And that is real powerful. And where it's really fun and also powerful is looking at the headlines for comparisons. So The Verge, which is a left-leaning rated outlet, ran with Google sues to stop the US from monitoring it like a bank. Over in TechCrunch, though, which is center-rated, well, they ran with Google pushes back against federal supervision of its payment arm. The difference is pretty damn obvious. One is more plain, the other one is a bit more emotive. Now, I'm not telling you that one is right, one is wrong, or better than the other. I don't trust Google whatsoever. But what's powerful here and what Ground does is it means we see all the different headlines, all the different takes, and that means we get a balanced perspective, not just an echo chamber based on whatever headline happened to be shared in your direction. And what I've just went through is one story. On Ground's homepage, interest pages like for gaming and tech, and the blind spot feed, they take the totality of the news, they make it digestible, balanced, and in context. Now, personally, I use their Vantage plan, and right now, if you go to ground.news/Bellular, you'll get 50% off unlimited access with the Vantage plan, and that's basically right. That's the best deal of the year for my subscribers and only for a limited time. So check it out down below. And to make matters even worse with this video, Activision are out here shattering our childhoods because here we see Santa Claus as a zombie with 6 fingers, which is pretty disappointing. Actually, most image models these days are well beyond making such simple mistakes as getting the wrong number of digits. If you look closely, you'll see the texture work is also deeply suspicious. I mean, AI art often looks okay until you examine the details. So take a look, right, at these 2 wrapped gifts. They make no sense spatially, and you actually see the textures sort of morph into each other at the middle. And that means that, this is ridiculous, and people are rightly unhappy when they see this in the game that they paid for, because this is Activision not even being bothered to have actual developers make art for an in-game reward. And yes, it is that. This isn't just some random loading screen. This is an unlockable reward. And this sort of thing is actually present across Season 1 of Call of Duty Black Ops 6. But today's story is not just that. Actors are also dropping out following a bombshell report that confirms that it's not just that some rogue developers are cutting corners at the company and, using the generative AI and the down low so that they can take the day off early. Oh no, this is new company policy. And if Activision, one of the largest, most successful players in our whole industry, gets away with it, well, you can be damn sure that others will follow. Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is a game made by 9 different studios, and it was actually one of the largest releases in the series' history. And to be honest with you, I think it actually deserves that. So here's where I stand. I loved Call of Duty Black Ops 6. It had my favorite character, Russell Adler, on a Star-Spangled Banner motorbike. I mean, come on, try not to get overexcited about that. But my point is, the campaign was a total blast. It was actually really well designed, it was great in a narrative level, gameplay feel was great, and I think the multiplayer is slick as hell and so much fun. There's only one reason why I'm not playing it right now, and it's my PC went kaput. But despite that success, within only a few weeks, the accusations would begin to flow. So the Christmas event featuring, loading screens that feel off. One example, of course, is our 6-fingered zombie Santa, and there are in fact others. Just take a look at this image. It's from the zombies mode. Those are gumballs, which sort of feature in the gameplay. But take a look at the hand, the gloved hand that is holding said gumballs. You will in fact see 6 fingers, plus where, the musculature says there's also a thumb. So what you're actually seeing there is a hand with 7 digits. How did a hand with 7 digits actually manage to ship in one of the largest, most financially successful games in the history of our entire industry that, in addition to that, is also one of the most well-staffed and resourced games in history? And again, these loading screens are not there by default. They are an in-game reward, something that they expect you to invest time and energy into earning, and that shows a contempt and a disregard for customers. But of course it gets worse. Got to talk about the actors. Activision is currently one of the studios that is being struck by the Screen Actors Guild. This is as a result of them not budging on better compensation and also protections against the use of generative AI. And the point with that's pretty damn simple. If you are a voiceover artist, your vocal performance is your livelihood, right? And with modern technology, it can be cloned. Now, I wanted to see how this kind of thing was going maybe 6 months ago, so a while back I threw a whole bunch of raw recordings into 11 Labs to see what sort of AI horror show version of my own voice would come out. And here's what that sounds like. Hey, it's me! I'm the real Michael! The guy you're listening to is an imposter. He's trapped me here. Please let me out. Skibidi. Yeah, that's a horror show, and it's obviously fake, but of course it seems fake, right? Of course it feels wrong to your ear. I dumped a whole bunch of raw recordings in, right? And they were full of mistakes, full of dead air, not actually a good job. But the top-of-the-line solutions, right, that are available, generally speaking, only to enterprise customers, those are vastly, vastly ahead. And we've even seen AI voice stuff be used in other big games. One great example of that is the Finals. Now, if the Screen Actors Guild was, striking Activision, why were any of these actors in BLOP 6? Were they actually crossing the picket line? Well, the answer there is likely no. A loophole in the strike meant that the games currently in production were beholden to the old contract, so work would have continued there. But that doesn't mean that staff were forced to work. And this is where we get to what has made players concerned. So people noticed that Sam sounded different in the new Zombies mode. Vio remains present in the 2 launch maps, and the working theory is that she has not actually been recast, but rather is being mimicked, because people have noticed a change, but they actually cannot find a replacement actor for that character in the game credits. And now, allegedly, and this is a quote, allegedly, quote, almost all of the actors in Zombies have pulled out, and that apparently includes some really big names. As an example, Nolan North. And suffice to say, per the leakers and the rumor mill, this would be a rather apparent thing in future updates to the mode, and the departures were basically because the developer refused to grant protections against people's voices being duplicated using generative AI. And if you're an actor, well, if your voice is duplicated by the company you just worked for, congratulations, you have just worked yourself out of a role. That would basically make the actors vestigial, and well, if you're an actor that sucks, but the reason why it matters to you is also pretty damn clear. Your products are getting worse. We should expect better than, 6-fingered Santa or the 7-digit hand that's holding the gumballs and the other AI slop that we see. We should expect better. And what matters is this is Activision policy, and they're not even trying to hide it. Here's something fun from Treyarch's active job listings. This is for a principal character concept artist, and you can see it features multiple different requirements for the prospective candidate to be familiar with off-the-shelf generative AI tools, of course, for the creation of assets in their games. And, well, there has to be evidence of their usage in the portfolio. yeah, just take a read, right? What's concerning to me is this is not like recent cases with, say, Wizards of the Coast, with Wacom, and with Hearthstone's whole debacle where there was pixel art versions of cards that came out. People found that there was Gen AI being used, and nobody was really happy about it, because in a lot of those cases, it was actually rogue artists or agencies, people at agencies, using AI without approval. Basically, hey, I'm going to let the robot do my job, and I'm just going to ship that work, and hopefully nobody will notice. Here, though, we see it as official Treyarch and Activision policy, and this stems from the absolutely fantastic reporting of Wired on this story that came out last July. Of course, it came out in July, but now we're actually seeing the impacts in shipped in-game rewards. So, they spoke to several staff at the company, and they identified a development process that was facing a top-down mandate of generative AI adoption. Staff basically could not speak out without risking their jobs. Suffice to say, artists are not a big fan of this sort of thing. And that explains why, of course, we, the players, are only wise to this now that we're seeing obvious slop being shipped in the actual game. Now, per the report, prior to spring 2023, Activision CTO Michael Vance had already approved using Midjourney and Stable Diffusion for making concept art, and this actually followed approving GPT 3.5 usage and the explicit approval of these tools to be used in Activision's concept art, marketing, and user surveys. Now, that stuff is obviously not like in-game content that's being sold to you, but I mean, it is AI slop reaching end users. And even when people say, listen, bro, we're just using the AI art for, some quick concept art, there's a very tiny example of that as a visual aid. Maybe somebody who doesn't really understand like a lot of the technical nuances, maybe doesn't have the artistic terminology. Perhaps they can produce an image that if they show to an artist, the artist will be able to understand, oh, okay, you're inspired by this, that. Okay, now I understand what you're saying. This is not that. This is replacing concept art done at companies. That concept art is a vital part of the creative process, and if that just gets thrown into a big machine that basically is going to be rehashing its training data, that's not really going to be good for the future of creativity, is it? Now, according to Wired's source, the promise was given to artists, well, you know what? I'll just read the quote. Activision assured its artists that generative AI would only be used for internal concepts, not final game assets, and importantly, that AI would not be used to replace them. What do you guys think the chances are of them going back on that word? Because obviously things have changed since then, but actually not much since then. You see, by the end of 2023, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 was selling a cosmetic bundle that Wired identified as being built using generative AI tools. Now, it's unlikely that Gen AI was just sitting there spitting out shippable works, like in a final state, but basic concept art by this point was totally on the cards, such as maybe prompting Japanese yokai mask and military operator. In fact, I entered just that prompt and I got this from ChatGPT. I asked it to be a little bit more photoreal, and compared to what Wired identified being shipped in COD, I mean, if I had have just said that, like, hey, the background should have fire in it, the mask should be red, it probably would start to look just like the demon face loading screen reward. And there's another fun aspect to this brought up by Stephanie Sterling, and it's pretty simple. It's a really strong point. So take a look at this, right? The yokai cosmetics. If those had simply, like, copied the original yokai art that was the inspiration, it would have very clearly been plagiarism. But if you run it through a genericification slop filter, which is what a lot of the image generation is, what you're almost doing is laundering credit, and I think most importantly, you're doing that in a way that is more legally grey and distinct, such that if you are an executive at Activision, well, there's more than enough legal and ethical wiggle room for you to feel okay demanding the use of those tools. So if you're, say, a well-known artist like Simon Stalenhag, I think he was a big fan whenever Generation Zero just said, you know what, we'll do a Stalenhag for the entire visuals of our game. Never mentioned the guy. It's only going to get worse with the AI, isn't it? So that idea of almost like credit laundering, plagiarism laundering, that is really compelling and a little bit disconcerting. One of the things in our industry that would lead to work being more unique is quite simply that you would have references and inspirations, but but if you just straight copied them, you'd feel like a massive dickhead. And that would actually create an incentive to make things that are new, different, transformative. And of course, if you're a concept artist, this is not a good time. We literally see them using this for internal concept art. We're right now at nearly 15,000 recorded layoffs in games this year. And that's only the recorded ones, not the dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of dead indie devs that, nobody will ever hear about. It's bad. And here's what Wired's source said following the Activision layoff of early 2024. Quote, "A lot of 2D artists were laid off," Noah says. "The department was slashed. Remaining concept artists, he claims, were forced to use AI to aid in their work." These are employees who, according to Noah, have basically been made to sign up for AI trainings, and the use has been promoted throughout the organization. This is policy, that's the point. And what's worse is, this isn't a scrappy indie who is just trying to hit above their weight and is going to use any tool that they can find. These are the biggest players in the game, making extremely expensive premium games that are absolutely stuffed to the brim with asks for your money. And this is how they are treating you and the people on their teams. And unfortunately, it's only going to get worse. At the time, that yokai cosmetic just completely slipped under the radar because it was pretty much free of obvious flaws. It was clearly fixed up in post. But Six Finger Santa is not that. The public are now noticing, and that means that either standards have slipped or the art teams, even, augmented, even the cyborgs that they've now been forced to become, that they're working to impossible deadlines and they cannot keep up the quality bar, even if they use all the tools that they've got. But it's not just that. This is also a de facto test. I say that because I'm not making the factual claim that I think Activision knowingly shipped this so that they could test. My point is, well, Activision don't have a problem with a negative YouTube video. They don't have a problem with an article in Wired, because the actual audience of their games is in the tens of millions. Far more people than even watch gaming YouTube videos, right? Like, even by watching this video, you're an enthusiast gamer. Congratulations. By making it, I suppose I am as well. They only care about the bottom line, and in the case of Activision, well, their new owners, Microsoft, have had their recent growth be because they are very, what is called in the investment world, bullish on artificial intelligence. The only thing that will change their mind is reduced audience spend, less money. And more likely than not, the Six-Fingered Santa will actually have proved them right. I don't think this is going to lead to people suddenly saying, no, we're no longer going to buy cosmetics in Call of Duty. There just doesn't seem to be any form of feasible punishment that would actually land here, which is unlike some other situations. Take a look at what Coca-Cola have recently found themselves in. They basically boasted that they were using AI to replace their iconic Christmas advertisements. Now, I know it's a bit weird to call a Christmas ad for a big brand an iconic thing, but why do you think Santa Claus has his current color scheme? There's a lot of Coke involved in that. Those advertisements absolutely resonated with people, and that's why, because yes, these adverts are like literally kind of beloved, that's why the backlash to Coca-Cola doing that was so goddamn strong. But here Activision are heavily using Gen AI for non-consumer facing production art, right? And now what they're doing is they're microdosing the generative AI into finished work, and it just seems that they're slowly increasing the dose. This is a slippery slope, or maybe you could call it a bit of a boiling pot. So much so that actors are allegedly turning down their paychecks in protest of this company, where it very much seems these actors believe that they're just going to be AI mimicked and treated badly. Now, as a final exercise, I would like you to consider where we were in 2014, before generative AI, before the complete assault of microtransactions. I mean, personally, I'd take it back to 2006, where I was there for the horse armor, I was there for the beginning, but no. Think about 2014. Then think about 2022, just before the AI stuff was really about to explode and when image gen just couldn't be used for concept art. And then think about now. Think about how quickly the advancement has been there, and if you're only thinking about Midjourney and DALL-E and the ones that we've seen in the West, you should take a look at what Tencent are doing. The models coming from China are genuinely impressive from just like a computer science standpoint. They are going to wreak havoc. Do you think this will get better directionally or worse by the year 2034, in a decade? You see, a lot of AI doomsayers will tell you that it's about to hit a brick wall. And yes, Sam Altman, of course, is very, biased whenever he says there is no wall. Because, OpenAI, he's got every incentive to not have there be a wall. People say that purely scaling up compute won't work. And I actually think that's kind of likely, yeah. But I take a look at the new generation of ChatGPT. I take a look at the new Claude 3.5 Sonnet that does actually use some more chain of thought reasoning and how much better its results are. I'm reminded of Moore's Law. So for a long time, we got yearly claims that Moore's Law, which, by the way, would be the rough doubling of compute every 18 months. And this held from, just off the top of my head, like the 70s. Like, it held for a stupidly long time. Yet there were yearly cries of, Moore's Law is about to stop. The compute is going to slow down. But guess what happened? It sort of didn't. We got multi-core chips, different instruction sets, new manufacturing techniques and breakthroughs. Do you remember when GPUs were dominating Bitcoin mining only for ASICs, which basically are just purpose-made pieces of hardware? And basically the ASICs came and they would absolutely wallop GPUs when it came to just all of the number crunching involved in crypto mining. That's just the idea of fixed function hardware. Well, right now, multiple early stage companies are working on similar, right? Like bespoke on the actual hardware AI processing that is, not a GPU. It could be the next generation of this. They could make the compute absolutely in that specific domain skyrocket. And that means that we should not think this will be fine. It's just a trend. Oh no, and I hate to be a doomer at this time of year, but it's absolutely not going to go better. All of these companies have shown that rather than increase the size of their internal art team and treat people better, they would rather just outsource as much as they can to keep cranking out the skins. Those very same companies with the very same incentives will obviously replace people worth 100 grand a year with some compute time. I mean, come on. And that means this. The best that me and you can do is guard ourselves. And we need to make sure that we are supporting teams of artists rather than the executives that seek to replace them. Good luck, and at least you can know that me and my team will be doing all that we can to keep you in the loop on this story, because it's one of those ones that I think is generationally important to our industry and is a true point of danger, and I suppose an inflection point in how games are made. That's it for this video. You know what? There's a lot more news, so take a look at this one next.